see in a lot of crafter groups on Facebook, there's people who do crochet and knitting and things like that. And they're like, I could never charge hourly for my time because no one will pay it. And I was like, well, no one will pay it if you don't ask them. No one will pay hourly for anyone's time if you don't ask them. You realize that you like to do crocheting, but people aren't going to pay $1,000 for a scarf. What would somebody pay $1,000 for? Or what could you use those crochet skills for that doesn't take as much time?
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma.
Hi, Janna. Nice to see you again.
You too.
Love the background. So happy to have you on my podcast today. You're only the second artist I've had on the podcast, so I'm excited to talk about you. And I know there are other mom artists or aspiring artists and craftswomen that will be happy to hear your story. So before we get into it, I would just be happy if you could introduce yourself a bit and share a bit about your background.
Sure. My name's Janna Willoughby-Lohr, and I am a poet, an artist, musician, and entrepreneur from Buffalo, New York. My company is called Papercraft Miracles, and it is an eco-friendly handmade paper art company. We make magical things out of paper that make people happy.
Yes, and I'll be sure to put your website in the show notes, but please check her things out. They're absolutely beautiful. But share, like, when did this start, this passion of yours, and when did you choose the medium of paper?
I always played with paper. My mom was a paper crafter as well. She did a lot of rubber stamping and screen printing and collage work and stuff like that. So we always had, things to play with paper around my house. And I did a lot of collage work as a kid because I would cut up magazines and things like that. And it was, really no cost art, making a lot of things
Right.
out of recycled materials. So I just did it. I've always done that since I was a kid. And when I went away to college, I initially was there on a creative writing scholarship, because I was going to be a performance poet. I was going to be a slam poet, and I was going to
Wow.
be a writer full time. And that was what I was planning to do. But when I got to school, I realized that the English lit major really only took 2 or 3 creative writing classes the whole 4 years, and the rest of
Wow.
it was reading like Chaucer and Milton and all these old dead white guys. And I was like, I don't want to do that. That's like the last thing I want to do in my life is read more old dead white guys. I'm not doing that. Um, so I started looking through the course catalog to see what else I could study now that I was, said yes to going to this school. And they had an entire book arts department. And I didn't even know that you could take classes in paper making and bookbinding and
Yeah,
things like that. I didn't know that was
me neither.
possible. Let alone that they had them at this little tiny school I happened to end up going to. So I signed up for as many of those classes as I could get as a freshman. And I took a class called Artist Books and Illustration, where I learned how to bind books, but also how to illustrate. And I learned about that particular art form of artist books, where the form, the design, the words, the materials, the illustrations, like how it feels when you open it and what it sounds like when you open it, all works together to make one bigger concept or a bigger idea. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. Like, I want to be able to take poems that I write and make them come alive in that way,
Wow.
kind of like pop-up books, sort of.
Yeah.
And then I took a paper making class the spring semester, and as soon as I put my arms like elbow deep in this, 5-gallon bucket full of pulp, I was like, this is my jam. Like I don't know, I really felt like I had made paper in a past life or something. Like I just instinctually knew how to work with handmade paper. I knew how to make it. It was weird. And so at the end of that year, I met with my advisor and I was like, hey, here's all the classes I took. What major am I working toward? And he said, those are all elective, so nothing.
Oh, wow. So,
Right? And I was already there on a scholarship, and this is a long time ago, and you couldn't just get unlimited student loans like you can now. You had to actually qualify that someday you could pay them back. So I was already maxed out on the loans I could get, and I was like, well, I can't do 5 years. Like this year has to count. What am I supposed to do? And he changed my life with one question. He said, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "Well, I want to be an artist and I don't want to be broke. How do I do that?"
Yeah.
And he said, "You should do that as your major." And I looked at him like he was insane. And he was like, "No, we have a major here called integrative studies. You can make up your own major." He's like, "Do you know how rare
Oh,
it is to be 19 years old and know exactly what you want to do for your whole life?" He's like, "You should do that because obviously there is not there a major to do what you want to do doesn't exist, and you know where you want to go. So you should spend your rest of your 4 years figuring out how to make money as an artist." And very long story short, I did make up my own major.
what
Uh,
classes, for example, did you take was that weren't necessarily art related? Did you take any business classes? Because you said like to learn how to
well,
make money.
I integrated entrepreneurial business and creative art together as one major. And I wanted to make sure that, like, one of the things when you pitch that you're going to want to make up your own major is you have to prove to the board of the school why you can't just double major.
Mm,
And I was like, well, I could major in business and then I could also major in art, but I wouldn't necessarily learn how to sell art because selling art isn't like selling any other
mm.
product, right? Like buy
It's
one,
a
get
very
one doesn't,
niche business, right?
right. It doesn't work that way. And you can't just, put art on the street and like people buy it. You can't just,
Right.
put it in a store and people get it, right? It's not like that. So I knew there was going to need to be some other aspect. Like I needed to learn the art of business and the business of art as opposed to just business and art. And how do those two things work together in the art world? And I also knew that I wasn't going to focus on primarily being a gallery artist. And that's really like the art majors. They had 1 2 credit class for seniors called Business for Artists. And all of the only thing that they taught in that class was how to how to make a catalog of your work and how to pitch yourself to galleries. But if you didn't want to do that kind of work and you wanted to do commercial work or custom work or things like that, there was nothing. And so I was like, well, what is the thing that is going to tie these two things together? What do I need to know to be able to interact with people and to sell art to people directly to
Yeah.
people? I was like, I need to learn how to work with people. So I put a whole section of my major and I took a bunch of social work classes.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
because I was like, I really need to learn how to help other people. And that like I wanted to make art um my junior year. I ended up 3 weeks into the school year, my mom passed away
Mm.
on Friday the 13th. And then 4 months later, on what would have been her next birthday, my dorm where I was living burnt to the ground
Oh,
with all of my stuff in it on her birthday,
what a,
the day before the new semester was supposed to start.
uh,
So, I had a year and a half left of school, and all of a sudden I had, no mom, no stuff,
grief and
nowhere to
no
live.
possessions. Yeah.
Um, but I could have quit going to school. I could have. Any, normal,
Yeah.
sane
And you,
person probably would have. But I knew that my weird major wasn't going to transfer anywhere. Like I couldn't take that to another university and be like, where am I going to transfer Gandhi's Search for Truth? Like that's not going to transfer. Definitely is a class I took. Um, so I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna like suck it up and figure out a way to go forward in all of this. So I went to the art studio and I started making all these artist books about my life, my experiences, and
mm,
what I was learning about grief and trauma and coming back to life after you think you're gonna die. And learning more about what life is really about. And it's about that human connection and helping other people and affecting positive change in the world and inspiring people. And that's really what life is all about. Like that's totally success for me. Whenever anybody's like, oh my god, you inspired me to finish my novel, or you inspired me to start making art again after 5 years of not doing anything, and I'm like, that's what it's all about. Right? It's
yeah.
not about making millions of dollars. Like that's not it. So this is such a long story, but like we're all in the middle of like kind of developing my major and figuring out what I wanted to do as a business and how I wanted to market all these different skills I had because I was still doing poetry and learning to play music and connecting with
Wow.
people
A
in a lot of different
Renaissance
ways.
woman.
I was like, how am I supposed to pick which one of these things is the marketable thing that I can really turn into a business? And through making these artist books about my experiences, I started setting up these kind of show and tell events and inviting people to come see these art pieces that I was making, where I would read what was in the book and tell the story and talk about how they were put together and why I made them and things like that. And people would come up to me after them and they would cry. And I had so many people say, like, I'm not the same person that I was 10 minutes ago. Like, I am different because I saw that piece of art, because I had that
What the
experience. And like,
power of art.
right. And they're like, you gave me a lot to think about. And I'm thinking about, all the things that I really want to do with my life that I've put on hold because somebody else expected me to do something else. Or I thought was supposed to be doing this, but now I realize that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. And I was like, well, me making this art helped heal me, but sharing it with other people helped heal them. And so that's when I really like dug in deeper with doing like the social work aspect of the major, because I was like, I want, I know that I now know I have the power to affect change in people like that and to help them find worth in their lives and to go after the things that make them feel fulfilled. And I was like, I don't care whatever I do for the rest of my life, but I want to do that, and I want to do it as often as I can. And that's why I called my business Papercraft Miracles, because it saved me when I literally have nothing.
That's what a powerful story. Like, I can't even imagine all of that happening, and then you still have a year and a half to go, and then you, like, luckily you had that, yeah, that miracle that something gave you, inspired you to start making art to help you with the grieving process. And then in that process, you inspire other people as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very weird time because, the dorm that burnt down was the biggest dorm on our campus. It was a very small school. And so I wasn't the only person who had lost all their stuff either. So, a lot of the people who, there was over 100 students who had nothing and then were expected to find a new home and go to school the next day.
Wow. And what did you
Um,
do in the meantime? Like, where did you stay?
well, it was really weird. So, like, the middle of the night, the dorm is on fire. The school is trying to get all the students, out of the street and stop watching the fire. They wanted us to go and sleep in the gym. And we were like, "Psh, we ain't sleeping in the gym. That's crazy." And my roommate, who I was living with at the time, had the forethought to put her coat on before she went outside. None of us knew it was a real fire before we went outside. Because the fire alarm was just going off, and we lived in the party dorm, and the fire alarm went off all the time. So we went outside, and she had put her coat on, and in her coat pocket she had her wallet and her keys to her car.
So you slept in a car.
So we got in her car
Oh, okay.
and we drove to a motel, and you know we were all broke college students, but I actually knew my credit card number from calling to check my balance every month because my bills were still going to my house at home. Um, so I knew it by heart. And I was like, I talked to the people at the counter. I was like, look, I don't have an ID and I don't actually have this card, but like, can I rent a room on this credit card number? Can you type it in and rent us a room? Because our dorm is on fire right now and my stuff is in the room, burning to the ground. And they did. They rented us a room. And so there were six of us in this two-room suite with a bathroom in the middle. Um, it was crazy. And we lived in that two-room suite for, I don't know, probably a month,
Yeah.
something like that. And then, like after we went over there, the school realized like we can't keep, 100 students living in the gym. So they gave us vouchers to stay at that hotel. So they, paid us back for all the money that we spent for
That's what I
living in
was
this
just
hotel. And they
wondering.
rented out like the
Like,
entire motel for students pretty much. And they had a shuttle that would go back and forth from the campus because most of us didn't have cars and things like that. But then they built us a room in a common room in one of the other dorms. And so me and my three best girlfriends all lived together in this big room that was kind of like a loft after that.
what an experience.
It was insane. And they cut my financial aid right after it happened too, because I couldn't
Oh,
put my mom on my FAFSA form anymore. So,
what? Like, you lost your parent. So, like, what are you supposed to do in that situation?
Yeah, they were like, I think you have to put your dad on your FAFSA. And even though my parents had in their divorce agreement, my mom got to keep the house and my dad didn't have to pay for college. Like that was their deal. And so I knew that he wasn't gonna pay for college. He was like, I don't have to. Like I gave up my house and that was my deal. And I brought that letter into the lady in the financial aid office and she said, I don't care. I think you're trying to cheat the system. That's what she said to me.
My gosh.
And I was like, seriously? My mom didn't have a will. My brother and I inherited her house in Buffalo that was falling apart, like 1,000 miles away. I kept having to take the Greyhound bus, like back and forth from North Carolina to Buffalo to go to housing court, because our house was in such bad shape, and they kept thinking we were like slumlords, and we're like, no, we're just young kids who like have this house, but she didn't have a will, so like we're responsible for it, but we don't actually own it, and we have no money and no agency and no nothing, and I go to school 1,000 miles away, and all this craziness. So yeah, in between when she died and when my stuff burnt up, I went back and forth like a bunch of times to go to court and, tried to figure out as much as I could when I was home for break and stuff like that. And I look back on it and I'm like, how did I do any of that?
Right?
And let alone like still get
That's a
straight A's.
lot.
I don't know. I think, part of it is that the what I was studying in school was exactly what I needed to be doing in the
Mm.
middle of all that. It was like school was demanding and exhausting, and I took as many credits as I could possibly get without paying extra. Most people take as few credits as possible to graduate, but I was like, no, 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 I want to take this class, and I was like maxed out every semester with every single class I could take. So, I think did you ever do the Enneagram assessment? It's like a personality test.
Oh yeah, and yeah, I am
One of those
familiar with that.
personality
Yes,
tests.
I've heard of it before, but no, I've never taken
There's
it.
there's nine different personalities, and for anyone who's listening who's familiar with it, I think it's really obvious, but I'm a seven. I'm the enthusiast, and for my personality type, when things are tough and things are difficult or things are not going well, we add new things. We are always seeking out things that are new, fun, and exciting to fill our plates so that we can avoid dealing with pain, fear, and loss. So looking back on it now, I see why, like, that's exactly what I did. I was like, oh, I'm not going to give myself any time to dwell on any of this because I will be legit busy, like 23 out of 24 hours of the day, doing things and making things and looking forward to the future and like really changing the way that I'm thinking about things and working on that. And I did that. I definitely did that. I was very overextended, but I was also studying all these things that I thought was really amazing and wonderful and inspiring and getting to do things with my life that my mom had always wanted to do with her life and she never figured out a way to do anything creative for money at
Wow,
all.
so that's even more of a motivation.
And I was like, she would be so pissed at me if I quit going to follow my dream and to sit home and wallow and be sad about her. She'd be like, hell no, don't you do that. Don't you dare do that. So I didn't. And I kept going to school and doing my crazy major and working on this business and kind of, filtering down what I did into some parts that I was willing to make marketable, parts that I was willing to try to monetize, and parts that I wasn't. Because I
And
really
which
love
parts
playing
were
music.
that?
Hmm?
Which part, besides the paper company, did you try to monetize any other forms of art, like your poetry or anything else?
I found that, like, when I was kind of studying which aspects of my creative outlets are the most marketable, are the most monetizable. And it's just weird to think that in 2003, 2004, that, making things out of paper when social media was just starting to be a thing, the internet was really becoming like a huge part of everyone's life at that point. Um, but it made sense that making art like that I could make things that could be for sale in a store. You know what I mean? Like I could make things and I could go and do a craft show or I could make custom work for somebody else. But monetizing poetry or performance or music is such a tough industry to get
Mm.
into like that. Like it's, you can make music, you can make your own chapbooks, but really, like if you're gonna make a living on selling chapbooks, you gotta hustle, like
Yeah.
majorly hustle, and you gotta tour, and do that kind of thing. And I was like, I can't really tour because I inherited this house. Like I have to go back to Buffalo when I graduate. I have to like figure out what to do with this house that's falling apart and take care of it. Like I had capital A adult responsibilities that a lot of people in their 20s don't have. And so I was like, I can't just leave and tour around the whole country to be a performance poet. Like I can't do that. I
And I
have to go
guess your
home and get a
passion
job
was
and
with
take
the
care of my
paint.
house.
Yeah, sorry.
It was good.
Now I was saying, and I guess your passion really was with paper because you loved it so much. And I guess if you like you were super passionate about, these people that are super passionate about music, or they're like, I'm willing to do anything, but you knew that you loved paper, and so you knew that, like, okay, you weren't willing to sacrifice all that when you already had something that's more easily monetizable, which was the paper. Was
Yeah,
it?
and it was more like it was easier for me to, you know, use the paper art as something that was like more commercially sellable.
Hmm.
Um, because also, a lot of times if you're trying to make it full time as a musician or as a poet or, performer or whatever, I mean, you need to be creating new content all the time.
Yeah.
And I knew that when I was going through hard times, it was a lot easier for me to write poetry and write songs and things like that. But when things were going well, I didn't have as much of the same inspiration. Like it didn't, I don't know. I felt like making my business doing paper art and sharing with other people and creating things for other people was something that I could kind of do here and there while I was still doing other things. Um, and it was the most viable, like business wise, it was definitely the most viable creative option for me.
I see.
So I still do all the other things. I still do poetry and I still play music and I still do those things and I do them because I love them. Um, and I think it's I made money doing them? Some, but it's, I don't run those parts of my business, my creative life like a business.
Right. It's like more of your
Hardly.
passion projects.
Yeah, it's just like I didn't want to. That's one thing with a lot of other artists is that like they say, I really love painting. I want to paint all day long. I want to paint as my full-time job. And then, once they make that into a business and start having to paint full time, or somebody who likes to crochet and they realize that they physically cannot crochet for 23 hours a day, like you can't do that.
Right.
And I didn't want my music to be something that I was kind of forced to do like that.
Hmm.
Like
Right.
I wanted to continue to keep doing it because I loved it, not because I was, making up songs I thought would sell. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Especially nowadays where like I feel like music comes out at a faster pace. We expect artists to like, okay, this single was a hit, now you need to make another one and another one. Where, in the past it's like, whenever you wait to be inspired, and I don't think they had the same pressure like they do now to constantly be creating content. And I don't think inspiration or, genius works like that. It's not something that's supposed to come to you 24/7.
Yeah. So I figured, if I was making art for other people and people were hiring me to make things, then I could be inspired by their inspiration. They say, I
Mm,
see this thing in my head and I don't know how to make it. Can you make that? And I end up doing that. And
awesome.
it kind of continues to fuel my creativity because I'm learning from other people. I'm learning from my clients, and they're saying, coming up with these cool ideas that are not necessarily always my idea. And then I put my own ideas onto it and say, how can we make this possible? So I like that part of it. I get to work with other people a lot more than I would if I was, hustling and touring around the states, like being a performance poet and
Yeah.
doing shows on college campuses for like three people.
And so when you graduated, what was your major that you graduated with?
It was called Entrepreneurial Creative Business Arts.
Well, created by Janna.
Yep. Yep. I have a BA in Integrative Studies with a concentration in Entrepreneurial Creative Business Arts with a focus on paper and book arts. Just saying.
So if there's any mom out there who's, it doesn't necessarily have to be paper, but any form of art that's maybe skeptical if they can monetize it, like what would you say to a mom like that?
Um, it's tricky because um, if you are a full-time primary caregiver at home, like, stay-at-home mom, or even like part-time job mom, but you have that aspect in your life, finding any time to literally do anything is really difficult. And I
Mm.
want to like acknowledge that. I don't want to just be like, oh yeah, all mompreneurs, you can start an art business, do it all the time. Like,
Keep it real.
it's
Yeah.
not easy. But if you are a mom and you find 3 hours a week to do something that fills you with joy, making something because you love it, that's success, first of all. So,
Yeah.
if you want to start thinking about how can I monetize this, is this the kind of thing that I could use to help support my family, whatnot? There are a lot of things to consider. If you like doing crochet, for instance, like very labor intensive, relatively high material cost as well. A lot of I see in a lot of crafter groups on Facebook, there's people who do crochet and knitting and things like that, and they're like, I could never charge hourly for my time because no one will pay it. And I was like, well, no one will pay it if you don't ask them.
Right.
No one will pay hourly for anyone's time if you don't ask them, right? So if you realize that you like to do crocheting, but people aren't going to pay $1,000 for a scarf, what would somebody pay $1,000 for?
Mm.
Or what could you use those crochet skills for that doesn't take as much time? What could you do with it? Could you make plant hangers that are cheaper than that? Could you make wall hangings that are intended to be capital A art that people hang on the wall? Like
Mm.
that kind of thing. Like, how can you utilize your skills in the amount of time that you have? Because a lot of people say, oh, well, I didn't really spend a lot of time because I was just, I just, knit while I'm watching TV or whatever. And I was like, that's still your time, right?
Right.
Because if you're knitting while you're watching TV for 2 hours in the evening, and all of a sudden you want to be able to replace your paycheck with that amount of money, right? Like, how many hours of sitting and watching TV and knitting do you need to put into that in order to make a living wage? Like,
Right.
it's not possible.
And it's
So,
your time, it's your labor, your materials, everything. That's something that you should charge for. It's your art.
exactly. And I mean, it's weird and it's slightly unfortunate that a lot of the art that moms like to make are considered crafts, right? So the price point through the market in general is lower for even fine craft. It's low, much lower. People expect to pay less for something that's handmade than a painting, right? Like
Mm.
it's kind of this sort of classist separation because the capital A gallery art world is still run by men. And a lot of the
It's at a
fine.
specific socioeconomic level, yeah.
Right, right. And so there has that, like, people have this preconceived notion in their heads that, like, oh, you got to be, if you're going to be a successful artist, you have to have capital A art that you sell in a gallery, right? And if you don't make that kind of art, then you're just a mom selling in a craft show, right? And if you want to be able to make full-time money, like, I'm not trying to be a dick, but like craft shows ain't it. Like, they are exhausting. Craft
Yeah.
shows are exhausting. Vendor shows are exhausting. And I'm not saying that nobody can do it, but you have to really, if you're going to do something like that, you got to take into consideration how much is the table fee? Are they doing any advertising? Who's going to show up there? Is your target market the person you really want to work with, the person who definitely loves your art and is going to spend a bunch of money? Are they even going to be there?
Mhm.
How many hours do you need to put into setting up your booth, traveling to the show, putting it all together, standing there on your feet all day long, paying a babysitter to watch your kids while you're there all day long, closing it back up and driving back home? How
Yeah.
many hours is
That's a
that,
lot.
right? So it's not
Yeah.
just like, oh, did I make the table fee back? But you got to remember, like you've got gas, you got wear and tear on your car, you have at least 10 hours. Like most of those craft shows, they're like, oh, it's just 10 to 6. But really, like you're there, you get there at 8 set up, you're done at 7. You got to have lunch, dinner, and breakfast in between because you're there all day long. If you have a person there helping you, which you usually have to do because it's really hard to run a table by yourself all day long with no breaks, then you also have to pay hourly for that person. Right. So a lot of times people say, oh, I could just go do a bunch of craft shows without realizing like the human cost, like
Mm-hmm.
the hidden costs of doing that. And typically, most craft shows, if you're paying yourself a living wage and you have an assistant and you're paying them a living wage and you're providing meals for your employees and yourself while you're there, it's not just that table fee. Like you're looking at a
Yeah,
good
that
like
sounds like a lot. Yeah.
right? It's like a good like $400 or $500 worth of labor and meals and travel time and all that stuff, plus the table fee. And you need to make that much money back from selling your stuff in order to break even.
Yeah, and that's not even the profit.
Right. That's in order to break even from doing that show. So for me, I don't do a lot of those shows, and I'm really selective about the ones that I do. When I first started out, I did tons of them because I was trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And you know what? For me, and the type of art that I sell, it doesn't work. Like my people usually are not there.
Mm.
But I do the couple of shows that I do, they're higher end, they're artisan shows, they're locally based, they're women based. I do some that are at our local book art center where like I know that people who love paper and books are going to be there because that's the venue.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like pre-established shows that people have been going to for years, like that kind of thing. Like I go to those because the people who know me go there because I'm there. And I know that I'm going to see people who are in my target market who appreciate the things that I make. They appreciate the handmade value. They appreciate my time. And I do it in order to connect with other people and hand out business cards. Because for me, custom orders is where it's at. Like, I make so much more money doing a custom order than I would selling things on my e-commerce store. Average like order through my store is probably like $50, 40, $50. Average custom order is like 400, 500 bucks, right?
Right.
So,
That's where it's at.
like I would need to make how many orders through my store in order to match up to doing one custom order. So for me, if I make enough money at the show to cover the fee and cover the cost of paying my people to be there and paying myself to be there, paying for everyone's time and any other advertisement I do for it, I take that and anything that I make after that, it's like paying me back for my advertising cost. Like I do those shows for advertising. I do them for brand awareness so people see me. It's definitely not a big money maker. Like it's an
Yeah.
investment in marketing to go and be out in the public and see people and meet people, meet other vendors too, and things like that. So, you know, there's so many things to consider when you want to do this, but number
Yeah.
one, figure out a way that whatever type of art that you want to make, whatever craft you want to make, find a way that you can cover your own time first. And don't discount your time or your skills or your expertise in what you know how to do. Because people buy art from artists because they don't know how to do that. They don't know how to make that
Right,
beautiful,
yeah. And that's in
right?
every industry. And I find that a lot of times women have a hard time like pricing their things accordingly. I know I was like that too. Like you I'm a dietitian, so I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this person like needs help. Like she has high blood pressure and prediabetes." So it's like I felt uncomfortable like even charging her because she had like serious health problems and if people ask for discounts, I would give it to them. And then one person told me like, "No. Like this is your this is your time. You went to school this many years. You need to like." And she was like, "And you deserve to like you are potentially extending their lifespan, giving them like a healthier life." So she was like, "You deserve to be reimbursed for that." And then it changed my whole mindset about like pricing and saying it with confidence. Like this is how much I charge. And yeah, and she was
Exactly.
telling me men usually don't have that problem of like, charging people accordingly, if not, overcharging.
Yeah, they definitely don't. And it's also like in most creative fields too. It's just it's that starving artist mentality, right? Where you enjoy what you do, how dare you also get paid for it,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
making art is just having fun. You're just playing. You're just playing around. You're just finger painting or whatever. Like you shouldn't be making money doing that because people who work jobs that are not fulfilling are pissed off that creative people get to do something that is fun, that is fulfilling, and they also get paid for it. And they're like, I don't get to have fun at my job. How come you get to have fun at your job?
Hmm.
Right? But when
Maybe
you
the
think
artist
about
even
it,
feels a little bit guilty that about it
of
too.
course, of
Yeah.
course they do. And I mean, it's kind of built like that because they want to keep the artist down. Because what do the artists do? The artists affect change. The
Hmm.
artists bring people together. The artists remind people of what is wrong in the world. The artists give people solutions for what is wrong in the world. That's what artists do. If 2020 taught us anything, people were like, oh my God, there's no new shows coming out. Oh my God, there's no tours. There's no concerts. There's no new music coming out. There's no this. There's no this. Oh, all of a sudden you realize the absence of art in your life. All those things are art. All those people are artists. And in a lot of ways, people kind of, once the person is quote unquote famous for it, they have no problem paying $400, $500,
Right.
$1,000 to go see Taylor Swift, right? People don't have a problem with the fact that, you know, famous actresses and famous actors make millions of dollars. That they're artists, you know, people don't bat an eye about putting those people up on pedestals. But when it comes to visual artists, they're like, nah, y'all should starve. Why?
Right.
Like, why? It's no different whatsoever. Um, in the way that they're doing something that other people can't do. They're providing outlets, they're providing connection, they're providing entertainment throughout the world. And I think artists deserve to be paid well for the things that they can do that other people can't do. And sometimes with crafters too, especially people be like, "Oh, well, I saw that on Pinterest. I could do that." I'm like, "Go ahead.
Then do it.
Go ahead. Go learn how to do it. You buy the equipment, you take the time, you take the effort and like power to you. If that's what you want in your house, do it. I'm not stopping you." And then they go start to do it and they're like, wow, this is really hard. And they come back and like, my bad, here's my money, take it. Give me flowers,
And
I
so
don't
in
know.
2024, even though I think it is like in this digital age, are people still attracted to paper art? I think that there is some nostalgia for it because when I was on your site, I was like, wow, everything is so beautiful. Like when
Yes, and it's funny because when I first started this, I came up with the idea in 2001. So like it's a long time ago, right? But when I was just about ready to graduate and I was saying, I'm going to make stationery, I'm going to make journals, and Live Journal was had just come out, and it was like the big thing. It's like writing on Live Journal and like having a blog because blogs didn't exist before that. Um, and people were like, what do you mean you're gonna make journals? No one's gonna ever write in a journal ever again. Everyone's gonna be on Live Journal in the future. And I'm like, whatever. It's different. At the time there weren't smartphones. So like you couldn't take Live Journal into the woods. You couldn't take Live Journal onto a boat. You couldn't go, bring it with you anywhere and do that and write in the same way or read in the same way or write someone a letter in the same way. You couldn't do that when I came up with this idea. And then social media came out, and then Evites came out, right? So I was doing wedding invitations too. And when Evites came out, so many people were like, oh my God, no one's ever going to send paper invitations like ever again. And within like 2 years, people were like, wow, Evites suck. Nobody wants to open them. They get lost in all the emails. This is so impersonal. And people like, once the shine of something new like that wears off, people realize that, the true actual way you connect with other people is in tangible ways. It's by using your senses, like what can you touch? What can you hold in your hand? It when so much of the world is digital and it doesn't feel real at all, people are starving. People are starving for tangible, real things they can hold in their hands.
Yeah,
And
it's
if
funny
they're
when
gonna
you
have
said the
stuff, they want it to be,
journals. When you were
yeah.
talking about journaling, like I have so like you have so many apps and calendars and everything that you can just put in your smartphone. But I still write. I have to write it down. Like I love to write in a journal, and when I have like to do things, I like to see it on the list. So it's something. Even in 2024, people with planner people that have like, intensive planners. It's still something about that ink on paper, or like even for gifts. I feel like it's something so special when you give someone like a handwritten letter. Still, like it's something like,
Exactly.
more, yeah. So I can't see that going away.
I don't think so either. And I mean, they've done scientific studies on it that when you read something on the page of a paper book, it stays in your brain far better and far longer than it does if you read it on a screen.
Mm.
Same thing with writing something down on a piece of paper. When you write your to-do list on a physical piece of paper,
Yeah, it
you
helps me
remember
remember
what's
better.
on it. If
Right.
you have it on a to-do list on your phone, how many times a day do you need to open your phone and look at it
Right.
again?
If I don't get a notification, then it's like it's gone.
It's out of sight, out of mind. But
Right.
once you've physically taken that tangible effort to write it down on the paper with your hand, you have that muscle memory to it. And it's like your
Right.
brain and your hand and the paper and all of the energy of those things connect together. And, it's the same thing now that, we do live in this different world where it is few and far between that people get anything in the mail that is not a bill or an advertisement, right?
Yeah.
So when somebody does get a letter in the mail, I think it's even more special than it used to be
Yeah,
because,
definitely.
and like when I was in, grade school and high school, we passed notes all the time because nobody had phone. We didn't do text messages. And it was so special to like get a note from your friend in class, right? And, I think my generation is probably the last generation that has that. And so, we still do write a lot of thank you notes. We do those things. And I was going through, my dad passed away after Christmas last year, and we were going through his things and just finding how many handwritten letters he had saved from
Mm.
people throughout his life. And that I got to learn so much about who he was as a person and who he was as a friend to other people and all this stuff because of all these letters that people had written him that he saved. And I just keep thinking, like, what are, what are our kids going to find when they go through our
Yeah.
stuff? You know, if they don't have our password, they're not finding anything.
I'm like
Like,
that too.
where
I
are
like to
those
save,
notes? So, like,
even though I don't, unfortunately, I don't have any really recent ones, but like, growing up, I saved like cards and notes and things like that because I'm a nostalgic, sentimental Cancer. But yeah, like, I really love these, like, gestures. Or I was like, had couch surfers and they left me like a handwritten note when they left. And it's like, I keep little things like that. And I hope one day my children will find it too.
exactly. And it's just, there's something really special about someone taking the time and the physical energy and the money energy to like take a piece of beautiful paper and to think about you and to put that pen to that paper and take the energy that's making them think about you right then. And it goes into that piece of paper. That energy, that intention goes into it. They put it in the mail. They paid for a stamp. They take it to the post office. Like they put
Mm.
it in the mail for you. And it comes to your house and you get to open it. And then you have that energy and it comes with it and you get to have it and you get to keep it forever. And it's that kind of experience, that connection experience. That's why I do what I do. All the things that I do has that running through it. It's like the intention of what was put into it while it was made and the story of why it was made, and how we send that tangible energy around the world.
Love it. And can you give us some examples of the custom work that you do?
Sure. So like a handful of my favorite custom things. I had a woman hire us to make two copies of a photo album. She came to us with a whole box of photos, and her best friend was in hospice. And she's like, these are all the photos from my friend's life. These are all the important people to her. And right now, she's with it enough to be able to tell me who these people are and tell me about them. And can you make me two copies of a photo album that has space around all the pictures so that I can sit with her and go through these photo albums while she's still alive and she can tell me who all these people are and I can document these people and their stories so that I can have a copy and I can give one to her family for when she's gone. And I was like,
Wow.
100%. Like let's do that. Like being able to give their friendship a way to live the rest of their friendship instead of mourn the fact that it's going to be over. A way to take that woman's story and make it permanent and tangible in a way that can be passed down to her family and her like throughout her family, and that her friend can keep it. And then, if her friend eventually passes away, her friend's family will see it and be like, what is this book? Where did this come from? Who are these people? And now they'll know. Like being able to do that kind of stuff is really
Yeah.
awesome. So like that's my favorite kind of special project that we do. But we've done some really fun stuff. We made custom plantable records for Lionel Richie and Earth, Wind and Fire,
Oh,
um,
cool.
that had the name of their songs and some song lyrics of theirs on it, and you could plant them in the ground and they would grow. We made
That's
those,
cool.
um, and we just did a lot of really cool, interesting things. I never know like what the day is going to bring. Someone's going to send me an email and say, "I need this weird thing. Everyone else says it's not possible. Can you make this?"
Wow, and I feel like that makes your job even more interesting and dynamic because it's like you never know. It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get, and then like they give you the idea, but you still have to use your creativity to bring it alive and put your spin on it, and that's so cool.
Exactly. That's why my team is amazing too. And like everyone on my team has different skills too. So when I'm like, hey, we got this inquiry, can we make this? Somebody emailed us and was like, I'm working on a project for reforestation in Puerto Rico. Can you make plantable Nerf darts that we can have kids shoot off at each other in a Nerf dart, like competition, and that we won't have to go pick them up out of the woods later because they're going to grow trees. Can you make those? I was like, let's see if we can make those. And
Let's
so
see.
like we all put our creative heads together and try to brainstorm like how can we use these materials that we have? What creative things can we put together to find a way to make that shape and to do it in a way that's, efficient labor wise? And does it actually shoot off a Nerf gun? Does it really fly? Like, what kind of seeds can we put in there? All those things. Like it's just nonstop creative problem solving all day
And was
long.
it successful? Did it work?
We did make ones that did shoot, but I don't know. We didn't actually do it as a job. They just paid us to make prototypes to see if it was possible. Fingers crossed. Hey, people at
Oh,
Nerf, let me
cool.
know. Let me know. We can make some plantable Nerf darts. But yeah, I mean, we did come up with a solution that like did fit inside a Nerf gun. They did shoot out the end of it. Like they didn't shoot as far as regular Nerf darts, not yet anyway. But it was just such a crazy project that I'm sure every other company that they contacted was like, "Psh, you crazy? No,
And you're
it's
like,
never gonna
bring it
happen."
on, let's try.
We say yes when other people say that's not possible because you never know if something's possible until you try. And it's after my dad passed away, there was one thing that I didn't realize how similar I was to him work wise. Like my work personality is very similar to the way that he worked. I mean, he would drive into work, and on his way into work he was a scientist, and he would get there and he would be like, okay, so I thought of this new way of approaching this problem on my commute today. And he would get his whole team of scientists together and grad students and say, here's how we can figure out how to create a new tool in order to study this aspect of biology that the tools don't exist, so we have to make our own, and here's how we can do it. And he would just come up with all these wild solutions to these problems that nobody had a solution for. And he was always very confident in just saying, hey, I'm super creative. Let's figure out a way to make this happen. And, it's got to be possible. If it goes with the laws of physics, it's possible.
Love it.
So think about that a lot.
And how many children do you have?
I have three.
Three. Wow. So how
Three
do you
kids. They're all under 10.
all under wow, a lot, a happy house.
A very loud house. It's very
Yeah,
loud.
it's like you don't even expect, like when you're in a quiet place, you're like, whoa, what is this? After three. So
Yeah.
how do you like navigate? You have your mom, three kids, and you have this like booming business, and how does that work?
Um, it's funny because people are like expect so much of mothers these days. It's like, oh, you're gonna work like you don't have kids and then parent like you don't have a job and also be beautiful and exercise and don't forget to practice self-care and like do this other thing and your house is clean and you have really nice clothes that never have food on them and this and that and also you remember to read because you gotta read, right?
Uh,
Like what,
that's
right?
exactly what I have on my on my website. Like they expect us to drink water and do 2,000 steps and like all of these things. Like yeah, we have to be like super women. Well, that's the expectation. We don't have to, but yeah.
Right. And and that, like, the expectations of a mother initially are from way back in the day when you could survive on one income easily. A small income was enough to have a house, and there was a person who didn't have to go to work who was in the house doing all the cooking and the cleaning and taking care of the kids and all of that stuff, right?
Right.
So, the expectations of what is put upon mothers is the expectation of what was put upon mothers who didn't need to work.
And I feel
Um,
like today there's even more expectations than in the past. Like in the past it was like just the household, but now it's like other stuff too. Like you need to well, we're contributing to the income and we have to look a certain way and maintain ourselves and know like and continue to study and like you said like I feel like it's even more pressure and our parents didn't do
it
this
is,
like
and it's
over
more than just
parenting that
like,
people expect today. We just like were go outside, play. Now they expect you to like be with them, be in their face all day, and So I feel
right,
like
it's like,
the expectations are even harder today.
they expect you to entertain your kids all the time and make all the homemade costumes and make sure that you're bringing the gluten-free snacks to the frickin' thing at school like every 5 seconds. And then they're like, oh, it's Spirit Week and you got to make sure your kid has 5 costumes to wear this week that are all handmade and they have to be perfect. And you know what I mean? Like there's all that
Yeah.
stuff and you have to decorate your house for all the holidays and you have to do this. I mean,
Oh.
no one is outright saying you have to, but like
Yeah,
there
but
are
it's
all
like
those
a
expectations that are
right.
put on top of mothers, and they're also like, oh, and you also better be great at your job. You better not ever take a day off because your kids are sick. You better not ever, you know, have to
Yeah.
take 2 weeks off after you have a baby. What's 2 weeks? Oh, you should just be back at it, riding a horse and running around and like all this crap. And I'm like, that's insane. All of those expectations are insane. And if your kids know that they're loved, that's all that matters. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be perfect. And, for people who say, oh, it's funny because you always see it on like Forbes or whatever. It's like, oh, how does this, top CEO do it? He's got all the stuff. He does all the things. He gets up at 5 and he works out every
Mm.
day. Look at his great routine. And I was like, yeah, because he's got multiple women, paid and
Yeah.
unpaid, who are running his entire life, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Oh,
and nobody's mentioning them in the article on Forbes. No one is saying
right.
that CEO's life is possible because of a woman who is driving his kids around town, right? Like no one
Right.
is mentioning that. So, when you got to keep that in perspective. If you're trying to be like boss as hell and also be a mom, is that like you need other people. Like you have to have other people in your
Yeah, you
village.
need to
I
create a
totally have
village.
other people
Yeah,
in
you
my
need
village.
we're
I
not meant
mean,
to do this alone. We're not.
we're not. We're
Yeah.
not. And like my husband is amazing. Um, he has continued to work his full-time gig that he doesn't love. He doesn't really enjoy it, but he does that. He holds it down so that I could grow this company and I stay at home and grow this company. I mean, it's in my house, the buildings. We own a building and my studio is in the same building. So I took on the role that like if the kids need to be picked up at school or they have doctor's appointments or they have that kind of stuff, like I pause my work and I work my schedule around their schedule because he's, the
Yeah.
full-time worker. Currently, he is laid off. So he has taken that stuff back on. Like he's not working right now and the kids don't have school today. And what is he doing? He's taking the kids to Chuck E. Cheese. Like he's doing the stuff with the kids. He's arranging the play dates. He's packing their lunches. He's getting them on the bus. Like he's doing that stuff. And there's a lot of women out there who unfortunately paired themselves up with men who think that kind of work is below them.
Hmm.
There's men who think that it's called babysitting to take
Yeah.
care of their own children, which honestly, I don't know if I could swear in this podcast, but I think that's bullshit.
No, it's
Uh,
fine.
right? And especially in this political climate that we're at right now, where, it has all of a sudden become cool to say women are property, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what we're at right now. Like there are a lot of men who think caring for children is below them. There are a lot of men out there who think that. And I think the more that women strategically don't connect themselves to men who think that way, who teach their sons not to be men who think that way, that's how we change the world. It
Right.
should be
To
like,
model that,
that's
right. Make sure our sons see that, our girls see that so they don't have that expectation. Yeah.
right. But if you do have a male partner who shows up for their kids and cares for their kids and has an equal partnership in taking care of them and changing diapers and doing laundry and doing dishes, and all of those things should be split 50-50 in a household, right? All of those things. And if you have one of those partners, make sure that that guy is out in his life outside the home telling other men what he does at home and being proud of it,
Right. Even
because
though I feel like it's gotten better with millennials. I think I even read like it was an article how millennial fathers are like with their children. Like it's like it was crazy, like a crazy number, like 90% more than, past generations. And so I feel
yeah.
like there is progress and hopefully it'll trickle down to like, this and second Gen Zs and Gen Alpha. So hopefully it'll continue down with that trend.
But yes, making sure that you have a village. I mean, there's so many moms who would never go and ask for help, and say, you know
Right.
what? I don't have it this week. Can somebody come over and help me fold laundry? Like, I can't, I don't have
Right.
it in me.
Yeah,
Can
asking for
somebody come
help.
watch my kids so I can go to this professional development meeting? Can somebody come after I have a baby and drop off a bunch of meals I can throw in my freezer? Can somebody do that? Because there's people who are out there who want to help.
Right. And learn
And
how to accept help. That's where I had a problem with too. I
exactly,
was like, but had to
you
learn how to
gotta
accept
ask
help
help.
and ask for help. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I am so privileged and fortunate to have family nearby. My parents are retired, and they spend a lot of time with my kids. And like my one stepmom, and my dad, they pick my boys up from school twice a week, and they do their homework with them twice a week. So two
Awesome.
days a week, I get to work till 5, and I don't have to think about homework when I get off work. I can just spend time with them and have dinner and enjoy them and not be yelling
Beautiful.
and making them do homework and all this stuff. Like, I know that I'm very privileged and lucky to have that. And I have some really amazing friends who believe in me, they believe in my company. And when they have free time, they just come over. They come
Wow,
over
that's
and they watch
beautiful.
my kids and they help me clean up my house, and they do those things because even with an amazing partner who is splits almost everything 50-50 as far as taking care of the house and taking care of the kids, like even with two adults in our house like that, it's still almost impossible to keep the house
Yeah,
together,
it
right?
is.
Like even with you know paying
Yeah,
someone a couple of hours a week to come and help, like folding the laundry and keeping up with those things, even having somebody come and do those things,
it's
it's
all.
still really difficult to keep all the things that are expected of us. And so people are like, oh, how do you do it all? How do you do it all? I'm like, you don't do it all at the same time.
Yeah, you can't do it all.
You can't do it all at the same time. Like, you need to know. I read this quote. I don't even know who said it. I'll have to look it up. But this woman said, you can juggle all the balls, but you need to know which ones are glass and which ones are plastic.
Mm, I love
Right?
that.
Because some of them are gonna fall on the ground, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's not possible. The world is gonna make you slow down sometimes. You're gonna get sick. You're gonna be exhausted. Like, your kids are gonna get sick. There's gonna be bullshit elections that take all of your mental and emotional energy and suck it right out of your body, and you're gonna need a while to recoup that and to pull it back in and to fill your cup back up. right? Like
Right.
you're gonna need to take downtime, and you have to remember, it's not the most important thing for all your kids' clothes to be folded or for your kids to have like Martha Stewart looking dinner every night, right? Like they don't want to eat that shit anyway, right? So, sometimes you can make breakfast for dinner and
Yeah.
scramble up some eggs and it takes 2 seconds. And sometimes you order pizza and the kids are like, yay! Like
Right.
when they're older, they're going to remember how much fun they had on Friday nights watching movies and eating pizza. And they don't realize that the parents are like, yo, we got pizza and watched a movie because we got nothing left. Like, the kids are
Yeah,
like,
it's
it's fun,
just
it's family
no
movie
over
night.
complicated. Like kids are easier to please than we realize, and it doesn't have to so much money and gadgets and special things don't have to go into it unless some parents mistakenly make that a value, like make that too valuable to them. But if from early on you just let kids be kids, they won't even care about all that fancy stuff.
Exactly, exactly. Like the less stuff that they have and the more that you make yourself be able to be present for them, even for like 5 minutes, that's what makes the difference for kids, right? Like they don't need
Mm.
you to be up in their grill 24 hours a day. And for me, some women can be with their kids at home all day and that fills their cup. But that doesn't do it for me and I'm not guilty about it, right? Like
Right. Everyone is
mom guilt
different.
is such a real thing and like dad guilt, not a thing, right? Like dads do not feel guilty for going to work. As far as I know, like I have
Right.
never heard that.
Me
They're
neither.
not guilty for going out and doing something or watching a football game or going hunting with their friend. I mean, that's all typical dude things. My husband doesn't do any
Yeah.
of those things. It's
Speaking,
like
oh, sorry.
those typical dude bro man night, whatever, right? Like that's expected that men should be able to take those things. And that, if women, if you dare take a night off to spend with your girls, like lucky for you, right? And I'm like, that's insane. Like, can't put
Right.
that on women. But all the times that I'm not with my kids, they're learning from someone else.
Which is
And
also valuable to have
exactly, just
to
like
different
if they were
perspectives
only
and learning
learning
from different people. Yeah.
if they're only learning one way of living and one way of existing, and it's only from me or their dad, that doesn't give them a good worldview. Like everyone has a different perspective and a different take on the world, and they have different knowledge, they have different experiences, they have different ways of explaining emotions, and like all these things that my kids learn from being around other people and learning from other adults and having so many people in their life who care about them, right?
Yeah.
Like, the more of those, extra aunties and uncles that you invite into their life, as long as they're people who are safe for your kids to
Right.
be
Of course.
around, you know what I mean? Like, obviously. But, I have people in my life now who were people that my mom, as a single mom, she had lots of friends that she asked for things from. And there's a lot of those people who still consider me to be one of their kids because they were friends with my mom when I was a kid. And like I still know those people now as an adult. And I have those people in my corner as I'm growing my business and they're sharing all my posts on Facebook and stuff like that. It's just like the more that you give your kids examples of how to help other people and how to be a good person out in the world, that is a great thing for your kids to be. And if it's going to work is something that fills you with joy and, gives you an outlet and makes you feel successful and productive and gives you the energy that when you come home, you can focus your time on your kids and spend your time with your kids and not be pissed at them for the 2 hours you see them a day. That's better for them than
Right.
to spend all day with you and realize and to only feel your frustration because you're exhausted with it. So like, you know, you got to figure out what's the right balance of, what works for you. Because some people are like they love just being home with their kids all the time, and that shit makes me crazy. Like I can't do it. It makes me not appreciate them
Yeah,
as
and at
much.
least you have the insight and the confidence. We're like, this is who I am, and yeah, and you're a better mom because of it.
Yeah, like I want them to grow up and to want to go to work at something that fills them with joy. I want them to have the confidence to pursue something that they love instead of getting a job that they think they're supposed to get. Because life is short and people spend so much of our time working. And if you don't enjoy that time that you're spending working, you got to
That's
find a way to do that because, you know, I'm so glad I don't have to spend so much of my time at something that I don't love.
yeah.
Not saying being an entrepreneur is easy,
Yeah, of
not
course
at
not.
all.
But
You know,
But at
it's
least
like,
it's something that you're doing. It's like your personal mission. You're doing it for your dream, for your aspirations, and not fulfilling somebody else's.
mhm, exactly. And like,
And
you don't have to own your own company to have that kind of job either.
right,
Like, you
yeah.
don't. You don't. You
Just
know, you
work
just
for a
have
company that's aligned with, things that you love to do or a vision that you
exactly.
have. Yeah.
Yeah, like at least work someplace where you are valued. And I used to right after college, I worked at a gas station. And I made like garbage money, but I had great benefits. And, you know, in some ways, was I, pissed to graduate college and then work at a gas station? Of course. Who isn't, right?
Right.
Um, but I learned so much about being a leader through working there. And my brother got sick with cancer while I worked there, and my boss was amazing. And my brother was in a coma and he was like in and out all the time, and like multiple times through the last month that he was alive, I kept getting phone calls like today's the day, it's about to happen, it's about to happen. And so like I continuously had to keep leaving work and rushing down to the hospital like over and over again. And if I had worked at literally any other gas station, I would have lost my job. But I had the kind of leader, I had the kind of boss who saw that my life, my outside of work life was more important than running a register. And he said, go do what you got to do. And he gave me that freedom to be there with my brother and be there with my family in the last weeks of his life. And, you know, being a leader myself and having my own team, and my one assistant, her husband was dying of cancer the first summer that she worked for me. And I told her, I mean, I learned how to be a leader from that leader. And I said to her, like, look, your job is here. Whatever you need to do, if gotta go and you gotta spend time with him, you should, because this is the time you have. If it makes you feel better to come and have a space to not be that person for a little while, you can come. Just let me know. And, the rest of us will pick up the slack until you're ready to come back. And, when they say nobody wants to work, nobody wants to work, I'm like, no one wants to be exploited.
Right.
Right? Because people are happy to work somewhere where they are cared for, where the leader recognizes that they have a much more important life outside of their job.
Right.
And, as long as you let people recognize that you care about them, they're happy to come to work. They're happy to be invested in your company. They're happy to work hard. And, got to be that kind of leader.
Yeah, totally agree.
This could be a
And
deep conversation,
and you mentioned like how guys have their like hobbies and they're like expected to do guy things, and women we often feel guilty if we like have a girls' night. So that's something that I always like to end our conversations with, because I feel like as moms sometimes we do like we're exhausted, we overextend ourselves sometimes, and then we feel guilty if we do something, just to relax or replenish ourselves. I don't know, take a art class or a bubble bath or a girls' night. What is it that fills your cup when you're like, okay, this has been a rough week now? Like, what do you do for your wellness or self-care?
So it depends on the week. It depends on what kind of exhaustion or whatever I am stuck with. Because I have chronic migraine and I have lived with chronic pain for
Mm,
over 30 years. Um, and so sometimes, it's the end of the week and I'm like, I physically can't. Like I can't anymore. And so then I'll have a day like yesterday where I literally am in my robe, in my slippers, in my pajamas, reading a book on the couch all day long, and I am not getting up and I am not cleaning and I am not doing stuff. And, you
guilt-free.
Right? It's just like I'm doing that. You know, I look around and I see the house is messy and I'm like, can we get a pizza? Can we just do something that's like heat up some leftovers, whatever? And I take that rest because there's rest is productive. And there's a lot of different kinds of rest, right? There's physical
Yeah.
rest, there's emotional rest, there's mental rest, there's spiritual rest, and you need all of those things. Um, but there's other times where it's not that I don't have enough in my cup, but that I have too much. Sometimes I got like too many things and there's not enough room in my cup for the stuff that matters. And I will go and I go perform.
Mm.
So playing music, playing shows, going out, doing open mics, doing that kind of thing. And like my husband knows like that's my non-negotiable. Like I have to go and do
Yeah.
that or I get real squirrely. So I go out and pour my heart out on the stage, and it's like scream therapy. You know what I mean? I can go
Yeah.
out with a microphone and literally scream in front of a whole bunch of people. Holy crap, it feels good. It's like you give all of that energy out, and then you get it tenfold back from the audience, and
Yeah.
it like
Well,
gets all it kind of like dumps all the crap out of my cup, and then fills it back up with stuff that's the stuff I need in there.
yeah, it's like a therapy session.
Exactly. And
Wow.
other than that, I do yoga. I like to do yoga.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm all about like sharing things that we do so moms don't feel guilty about taking time. Like I even that what you said, like just laying on the couch and relaxing and like we're gonna order pizza tonight. That's an act of self-care in my opinion because like sometimes we're like we've had it up to here. We just need to relax for the night and not try to, do anything fancy. But yeah, I'm all for it. Go do yoga, take a walk, I don't know, take a bubble bath, something, but and not feel guilty about it because that's the thing. I feel like I used to feel guilty. Like I'm like, oh man, what if my son wakes up and he cries and then my husband, it's so funny. He told me the same thing. Sometimes I have struggle with this. I'm like, oh, I didn't get all the things done today, and then I'm like, and my husband will tell me, and I'm just like resting because I'm tired, and he would tell me, rest is productive, and so he told me, you're like the second person. Like I haven't heard that before besides him. Like, yeah, sometimes rest is productive.
Rest is always productive.
Yeah,
Always
we need it.
productive.
And then you feel better afterwards and you're like and you're more productive than you would be if you overextended yourself. So,
Exactly. Like never underestimate the power of an 8-minute power nap.
yeah.
Too. Like, and I usually don't even go to sleep, but sometimes just laying down, closing my eyes, and just not doing for like 8 minutes, 8, 10 minutes, and it's like I'm a whole
Like a
different
cup of
person,
coffee.
like
Yeah.
resets my nervous system, allows me to be like, oh yeah, I should relax my shoulders. I should stop clenching my jaw. I should stop hating the world. Like it can it can really change everything in a
It
few
can.
minutes.
I'm all for it. Everybody find more acts of that in your life. Fill up your schedule with that too. Well, Jana, this is conversation exceeded my expectations. It went places that I didn't even think we would go into, and I love this conversation. But before we
Huh.
go, please shout out your website and where people can connect with you and order from your website and order custom gifts for their loved ones for the holidays. Give us all the deets.
So my website is papercraftmiracles.com. I try to make it easy to find. We're also at Papercraft Miracles on like all the social medias and stuff like that. The ones that count anyway. um, and we have a whole bunch of pre-made things on the website. And if you want something custom, you can book an order appointment, a custom order consultation right through my website, in the custom order tab at the top. And you can look at different examples of some things that we've made. And I also am currently in the process of making a course to teach other artists how to start businesses that actually make money. Fingers crossed, it should be out in January. And we are creating a fund with a portion of the proceeds to provide childcare at professional development events so that moms can go learn how to be better leaders. So stay tuned
Love
for
it.
that. You can pre-order the course right on my website and save 50% on it with the code AOBPRE. And it's right on the homepage.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jana. I love your story and I love your art, and I would love to have you again in the future.
I'm happy to be here. I got all the stories.
Yeah, it sounds I'm like I could ask you more things, but I was like, okay, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate you sharing your story with my platform and all the
Anytime.
best to you.
Me too.
Bye bye.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the